What's up, YouTube? Jeff, your Style O.G. And on today's video, I'm going to share with you some of my best tips on how you can be a little less boring. If you're new to the channel, we release a new video every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, discussing various men's lifestyle topics such as style, grooming, and dating. I invite you to subscribe, tap the notification bell, and join us. And to my returning friends like Shaq, salute. Now, of course, nobody wants to be the boring guy, the person that can't hold people's attention. Nobody wants to be around, and people look for an exit to get away from your conversation. But the good news is there's some things you can do to be a little less boring. Now, I'm not going to tell you at the end of this video you're going to be the life of the party, but you can make incremental changes to hold people's attention and be a little less boring. So without any further delay, let's hop right into it. Now, to start things off, one of the things you want to do to be less boring is to be more interesting to people. And one of the easiest ways to be more interesting, be more interested. Here's what I mean. When you can show that you're interested in another person, they'll feel you're more engaged. A more engaged person is a less boring person. So work on being an active listener. Make eye contact. Maintain it. When you actively listen to another person and you're interested in what they have to say, it makes them feel heard, it makes them feel valued. One of the mistakes a lot of boring people make is when they're having conversation, they don't maintain that eye contact. They let their eyes wander around the room. Don't do that. That's a surefire sign you're not interested and will make you less interesting. Because when you're having a conversation and you look bored, you'll appear boring. One of the best things you can do, hands down, to be a little less boring, be interested in the person or persons you're talking to. Now, one of the surefire ways you'll easily get lumped into the boring category is to have nothing to say or nothing to add to a conversation. If you want to seem a little less boring, take control of conversations. You see, a person who is proactive, including in conversation, is seen as less boring, more interesting, more take charge, more leader-like. All characteristics of a less boring person. And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be that difficult. Fall back on the last tip. When you're being an active listener, one of the ways to take control of the conversation, ask open-ended questions. These are questions that require more than a yes or no answer. This will get the other person engaged, but you can lead the conversation. And once you ask the open-ended question and they answer it, follow up with follow-up questions. But on top of that, taking control of conversations allows you to speak intelligently about things you're well-versed in. This allows you to make sure there's none of those awkward, uncomfortable lulls. But make sure you only speak on things you have a working knowledge base of. Just don't ramble on about things you don't know about. Yes, you want to add to the conversation, but you don't want to talk excessively, especially about yourself. Engage in the conversation, but don't dominate it. When you do all the talking, that's boring. As a bonus tip, as you're engaged in conversation, offer a smile. The best type of smile, let a slow smile spread across your face. Now, for our first couple of tips, we focused on communication as a way to be less boring. And our next tip is about communication as well, but this time of the non-verbal variety. If you want to be less boring, work on your body language. Now, when it comes to communication, a lot of it is non-verbal, your body language cues. And if you use the wrong ones, people will definitely find you boring. For example, do you have slouched over posture? Are you always looking down at the ground? Are you pointed away from other people, seemingly not engaged? That will make you more boring. What you need to do, a lot of the opposite. Orient your body towards the person you're talking to. I'm talking about both your torso and your toes. Hands at your side, not crossed, looking up, making and maintaining eye contact. All this open body language will welcome the person in, making you appear more engaged and less boring. When you have closed body language, it pushes people away. It makes you seem uninterested and more boring. So remember, without opening your mouth, you can appear less boring. Orient your body towards other people, have open body language, and welcome them in. Now I want to take a little time to talk about today's video sponsor, Ritual, and the newest product, Symbiotic Plus. Now, I've personally been using Ritual's Essentials Multivitamin daily for the last couple of years, and I'm excited to incorporate Symbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplement to help support gut digestive and immune health. What is the purpose of this 3-in-1? First, the prebiotic. The prebiotic supports the growth and activity of beneficial bacteria living in the gut. Probiotics are live microorganisms that are included to relieve occasional bloating, gas, and mild diarrhea. And postbiotics supplies fuel to the cells that make up the gut lining and support gut barrier function. And like all Ritual products, Symbiotic Plus is science-based and research-stacked, especially when compared to other direct-to-consumer and top-selling probiotics on the market. On top of that, Ritual's clean formula is vegan-friendly, non-GMO, has no animal products or artificial colors, and is major allergen-free. And every ingredient is traceable, showing you every labeled ingredient and supplier. Now, not only does Symbiotic Plus and Ritual sponsor today's video, they've got a special offer for the Style O.G family. Go to ritual.com/StyleOG20 and at checkout, use my discount code StyleOG20 for 20% off your first month. So make sure you're doing what I'm doing. Incorporate a probiotic into your daily health regimen. Incorporate Ritual's Symbiotic Plus. Now, if you want a surefire way to be seen as one of those boring people, all you have to do is be the guy who complains all the time. Yes, if you want to seem less boring, stop complaining so much. Being a complainer is one of the most annoying traits that's often seen in boring people. And it's a problem because of two things. When you're a complainer, you're doing one of the things that boring people do a lot. They spend a lot of time talking about themselves. Now, couple this with the other problem that comes with complaining. Not only are you talking about yourself excessively, you're bringing negative energy to the conversation and those around you. Definitely boring. Nobody wants to hear you drone on and on about yourself. Want to make it doubly worse? Drone on about your problems. The key thing to keep in mind, a lot of times people don't often remember what you do, but they do remember how you make them feel. If you're doing all this complaining and bringing all this negative Debbie Downer energy, who wants to be around that guy? Now, there's nothing wrong with an occasional venting session, but don't let your default conversation be a complaint about how terrible your life is. Nobody wants to hear that. It's negative energy and it's very boring. Now, next up is something I had to work on. Yes, I had some times when I realized I was boring. And I tell you what was making people feel this way. I needed to ease up on the too cool act. Now, here's the thing. Yes, I was seen as a cool guy and very popular. People wanted to be around me when I got there, but when I engaged in conversation, I could see their eyes wandering. I could see I wasn't holding their attention. And here's why. Being cool often is equated as being aloof, reserved, not engaging. It can make you seem cool, but it also can make you seem very boring. And I need to work on that. Now, I didn't step completely out of my personality, but I engaged more, initiated conversation, started doing a lot more of the things we're talking about in this video. Yes, you can be cool. Yes, you can be popular. But guess what? You might not get invited a lot of places. People might be happy to see you when you're there because they want to hang on to your popularity, but you'll notice that conversations don't go anywhere. You're too reserved. If you're too cool for school, don't have much to say, that gets boring very quickly. Take it from me and my personal experience, there's a fine line between cool and boring. Now, next up is one of my biggest recommendations to my guys out there who are honest with themselves and know they fall into the category of boring. Don't make it worse by not putting away your smartphone. Now, in modern times, a lot of us are glued to our phones, but doing this double downs or you're boring if you're that boring guy. Here's why. Having your head buried in your phone makes you appear distracted and uninterested. Everybody's looking down at their screens. You can't engage with someone. You can't make a connection. If you're the boring guy, you can't take this chance. There'll be plenty of time later to check your emails and text messages. If you seem more interested in those emails, the person will realize you're not interested in them, making you appear less interesting. One of the best ways to be less boring is to be present in the moment, to engage. You can't be distracted by looking down at your phone. And for my guys out there who are self-aware enough to know they fall into the category of boring, don't double down by staring down at your phone. Now, next up is a tip I use to help me get out of my earlier boring tendency. You know, the too cool for school problem? One of the things I had to do, step out of my comfort zone. You see, boring people are often complacent, comfortable, and don't take any risks. Yes, this can make you feel safe, but it can also make you very predictable. Being predictable can also lead to being seen as boring. What I recommend you do if you're someone who gets stuck in their comfort zones, try new things, have new experiences, take up new hobbies. You see, the more things you do, the more you'll have to talk about. The more you appear interesting. And here's the thing, the more experiences you have, the more you step out of your comfort zone, you'll have things you can relate to and connect with other people. The more wide-ranging your experiences, the easier it is to build a connection with another person in conversation. If you have 4 or 5 things you're into, that's 4 or 5 things to talk about. And the more interesting things you do, the more fun you'll have. The more fun you'll have, the more fun a person you'll be. And of course, this will translate to you being less boring. Now, as we mentioned, being a fun person is very difficult to be seen as boring, which leads very nicely into my next tip. You want to be seen as less boring? Lean into your sense of humor. You see, when people are smiling and laughing around you, it's hard to come off as boring. The more fun people have when they're around you, your presence and company seems much more enjoyable. Sometimes you can seem boring because you just take yourself too seriously. Relax. Don't be afraid to be a little silly. Now, I said silly, not goofy. Don't be afraid to laugh at or make fun of yourself. Be a little self-deprecating. And one of the best things you can do, take initiative to use your sense of humor. Be the first one to crack a joke. So relax, laugh, share a smile with someone, because a stiff, uptight person is always seen as boring. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, being boring can be a drag. Now, nobody expects you to turn into the life of the party overnight. And these tips from the video won't do that for you. However, they can help you make incremental changes. If you incorporate some of the tips we talked about today, you'll find that people will see you much more engaging, enjoyable, and much more fun to be around. Now, as always, I love to have your input. Let the Style O.G family know in the comment section if you have some great suggestions on how they might just be a little less boring.